Aloha Worm Ohana! For those of you who did your harvest in early April, your Vermicast has been sitting and seasoning since then. Oh, I had 5 gallons of Vermicast at my harvest, which I did on April 1st. So it's been about 3 months of letting it sit. I had it in a ventilated box, so hooray for these ventilated boxes. And it stayed moist in there, and it continued to break down. Now this looks great now. When we put it in there, it was still pretty fibrous with the bedding material still unworked, and it was pretty finished, but not quite. We did a 6-month cycle with our worm bins because that was the time we had. Most people go a little longer, maybe 8-9 months. Some people go as long as a year to get a more fully finished Vermicast. But ours looks pretty darn good. I'm pretty thrilled with this right now. It looks gorgeous. It's definitely more refined. It's been broken down more. And I was pretty concerned because when we did the harvest, I had a whole lot of eggs and babies that I didn't pick out. And I knew if I kept them in the Vermicast during the seasoning period that they'd be okay. There was enough food in there to sustain babies, that the eggs would hatch and some babies would grow, and it'd be easier to rescue any wormies that were still left. Now, the truth of the matter is there is certain casualty rate with any harvest. On the mainland, they sort of figure 10% of worms are lost. We don't lose nearly that much, but I think you just have to accept that you're not going to be able to rescue every single baby wormy. Worms are designed to be expendable. They are just incredibly reproductive, so please don't feel bad knowing that you're going to lose a few worms. But we're going to try and rescue whichever ones we can easily pick out of here. And the rest will just have to go into the Vermicast and into the potted plant or the garden. And of course, they will not survive. As you know, these epigeic worms, the composting worms, will not survive in a soil environment. So we are going to be sacrificing a few of our babies, but you have to kind of accept that's part of the deal. But do the best you can. I got a bunch of worms here. I probably have a couple of ounces of wormies that we've rescued. So I'm just going to go toss them in my bin, wish them luck. They will feel like they've died and gone to heaven because they've been sitting in Vermicast with nothing really to eat but what was left over at our harvest. Okay, so now we've extricated a ball of wormies. They were just little eggs and babies when we started. 3 months later, you could get them out of there. And again, I suggest that you take it slow. You don't have to do the whole batch at once. You can spread it out over a few days and just do a bit if you want to do your whole batch at once. Or, you know what works better if you're just going to use a little at a time? Just scrape off the top as you need it from your ventilated box or your bucket. The worms will keep going down. When you get down to the very bottom, they'll be. I would say you have a year for that Vermicast to be totally finished. You can use your Vermicast bit by bit until December. The worms that are alive will still be alive at the bottom, and you can just take a few handfuls at a time. And that way you don't have that process of separating the worms. As you see, it's just the same process that we use when we do a harvest, basically letting worms go down, peeling off the top. And yeah, it's a process. It takes some time. If you're going to do the whole batch, take your time. Don't try and do it in one fell swoop. I was just demonstrating because it does take a while. Save whatever wormies you can, and the ones that get lost, that's the way it goes. They'll contribute their protein to the soil. And you'll have a nice big bucket of Vermicast to use, whether you're going to use it all at once for a large planting, you're mixing it with some potting soil, or you're doing a lot of planting and you need a lot at once. Here's the deal. This substance is not a top dressing. It is to be used by the roots. Now there is a tutorial, a 3-page article that I wrote on the website under the little menu item called Resources. I put all the science and all the specifics about how to use that Vermicast in that 3-page document. So I'm going to ask you to read it because I'm not going to talk about it here. It's just too much. it's much better to read it, but that will give you the background on Vermicast and also the details about its use. But suffice it for now to say that don't use it as a top dress. It's probably the biggest mistake people make. It will work with the roots of plants only. So you're going to use it in small doses in the root zone. When you plant, when you repot, a little handful mixed in to the hole or the row before you put your seed or seedling in will really make a huge difference in giving your plants a great start. So for the most part, people use this as a solid when they are planting, repotting, or making a potting soil, a mix. But a little bit goes a long way. It works with the roots of plants, so get it by the roots in whatever way you use it, and it'll work just great. Now, it's wonderful and very versatile as a solid, but a lot of people want to use it as a soil drench once the plants are in, because you're not going to be digging around near the roots. You want it to come down with the liquid down to the roots. And that's probably the way vermicast and compost is used most often. And you don't need anything fancy to do this. Often people will take like a pantyhose toe or a mesh bag and put a cup or two in a little mesh bag and soak it in some water in a 5-gallon bucket for 24 hours. You don't want to give it much longer than that because all of the microorganisms are oxygen breathers. Once the oxygen is depleted from the water, they'll start to die off. So you want to use it when you want to make your tea pretty quickly and use it within 24 hours. So you'll put a batch in there, maybe you'll stir it up a little bit, but let it soak for a day and then water your plants with it. So just water away, it'll work great. Now we have someone who buys a lot of vermicast from us. She has a really simple way of doing it. She just takes a couple handfuls, sticks it in the bottom of her watering can, lets it sit there for a day, stirs it up a little bit and goes watering everything, and she finds it works better than anything. So you don't have to do a lot of fancy stuff to make an aqueous extract or tea from this. But again, I want to really make clear that when you make a tea, you make it from the finished product. It's not at all the leachate that comes out the bottom of your bin. A lot of people call that tea, but a true tea is made either aerated or not aerated with the finished product that you seep like you would with a tea bag. So a lot of people feel aeration will do it better, and that's probably true. But even unaerated, a vermicast tea will work just beautifully. So I suggest you experiment around a little bit. You have a whole giant bucket, right? Because we harvested that bin and everybody got plenty of vermicast. So rescue the worms you can out of there and just try a handful in a watering can or in a mesh bag for 24 hours in a bucket. Aerate it if you've got a bubbler, or just stir it up a few times while it's brewing. And that will make a very, very serviceable tea.